All right, well, I think we're all here. In the room or in my office here, we have myself, Kelly, Don, and Jennifer. Also, just everybody on the phone, so you're aware, we've got David and Mona Gersman here, and they're recording the call. I assume they'll probably post it on Facebook and so forth. So just be aware of that. I think we also have Steve, Bob.
Dave Weiner and Jay Thomas.
Hello. Who is that just chimed in?
This is Lynn Dave Weiner and Jay Thomas with Thomas and Dave Weiner.
Okay.
Hello.
This is Alexa speaking. I had sent out an email that I contacted a firm. They were nice enough to give me some of their time and get back with me, and were able to call in this morning. So I thought we all could ask them a few questions as far as deciding how we were going to go about hiring an attorney. So they were nice enough to call in this morning, and if anyone has anyone else that they'd like to set up in the future, that's fine. This was the most responsive team that I had met thus far.
Well, as I said in my email the other day, I'd like us to take a look at Folston Seek, and we retain them as healthcare attorneys. I think they have but we can do an interview on that at a future date. I think, there's something to having a firm with healthcare experience and background as well as litigation in other areas. So that would be
Absolutely.
Now, Alexis.
Absolutely. So maybe, I'm sure we don't want to take up all of their time, so since they're able to call in first thing, you could go ahead and ask them the questions that you'd like to ask so that we can make a determination about hiring in the near future after we do talk with the others who will be presenting.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Who's on the phone from this firm? Can you give me a name?
Yes, this is Jay Thomas and Lynn Bates Weiner, the firm of Thomas Bates Weiner. We're in Overland Park.
Thomas and the other person, please.
Lynn Dave Weiner. I am his partner. I'm the Dave Weiner half of Thomas and Dave Weiner.
Well, Alexis, do you want to go ahead and get started then?
Yeah, maybe Lynn and Jay, if you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit of your background about dealing in healthcare, specifically nursing homes. And then I know you had already explained to me you have some extensive background in litigation as far as corporate and business transactions are concerned. So if you would just give us a little overview of what your experience is, that would be helpful.
We'd be happy to could, Dave, because we kind of know who we were talking to before we begin.
Yes, I'm sorry. I should introduce you. So our committee comprises of myself. I'm a sitting commissioner right now on the board of 3. Kelly, who answers the phone there when you called in, she is the economic development director. We also have our clerk, Don Harlow, and our county attorney, Jennifer O'Hare, and then the administrator of our county hospital is Steve Granzo. And then I believe we have 2 additional people on the phone who have been nice enough to help us in the past. One is a financial consultant named Doug Alden. And then Bob, I'm sorry, is it Seibel or Stiebel? Stiebel. So Bob Stiebel, he himself operates some nursing homes, but he's actually out of state. However, he was a contact for us that has been able to provide some input that was much needed at different times. And I think that's the whole committee.
Okay. Well, to give you a little bit of background of what we do, first of all, Lynn practices strictly in the elder law and estate planning field, but she's very involved with people in Topeka, has contacts up there on a number of issues and other matters that come up, whether they be Medicaid issues or issues that have to deal with nursing home regulation and that type of thing. My background is both business and multiple forms of litigation. I've done this 42 years. I represent the Greater Kansas City Better Business Bureau, so I have an extensive contact with that organization and certainly some of the outreach from there. We do represent various corporations, usually smaller to mid-size. I have a background dealing in the healthcare field. Is that for years I've done a considerable amount of health and, frankly, malpractice litigation. But that has shifted in the last 10 to 15 years to more of the kind of thing we're talking about here, which is elder law aspects, including litigation. So there is that. As far as the specifics of nursing homes and hospitals, our acquaintance there has to do with representation of people on each side of that. But I would not kid you to say that our familiarity is mainly based upon patient care issues that have made us connect with the KDADs and the ombudsman people and those types of things in Topeka. So that is it. We're frequently involved in all kinds of leases and negotiation. We do a considerable amount of that, and I can say that our experience in that goes back many years.
I would probably add one more thing, just informationally. Prior to going to law school, I am also a licensed clinical professional counselor in the state of Kansas. And I worked for 16 years in emergency services. And part of my job in emergency services was to assess elderly people for nursing home care, specifically for mental health nursing home care. And so I've been dealing with nursing homes and patients in these nursing homes since 1993. So it just kind of merged as I went into law school that the elder law and working with nursing homes, it was just a very good fit. But the law career is not the only way that I'm familiar with working with these entities.
Yeah, I'll add to that our personal contact. My wife is a registered nurse. She has been a guardian and conservator of parents who have been residents of nursing homes in Centralia and Overland Park. My father also was a resident of a nursing home, as was my mother, and so we had considerable interaction with the aspects of operations in connection with all of those things. So, we touch a lot of bases, and that's why we get hired. We're also much more personally available than many of the larger firms, and I know those consider to be a fine law firm, so I'm not putting them down when I say that.
I will personally attest to that, just in the fact that every time I've called, one of you has answered the phone, and I've contacted quite a few other law firms where I never seem to be able to get past the front desk. So I do thank you for your time.
Well, as we told you the other day when we visited, Lynn and I have kind of a unique place in the market because what we do is we don't bill double, but you get double the service because we stay acquainted with each other's cases and certainly make it possible that we can give you the best service with each and every area that we may encounter. So if you can find a better deal than that, then by all means, I would encourage you to take it.
Well, I guess this is Steve Granzo. I'm the CEO at Lincoln County Hospital, so I guess I'll ask a couple of questions just to start off with. Do you have much experience working with, rural, in our case, we're a frontier county in the state of Kansas, but with rural frontier healthcare as far as whether it's hospitals and or long-term care facilities?
In terms of working with them, I would say that would be mainly as a result of the familial contact and representation of individuals that has put us in place with them in multiple situations with administrators and that type of thing. Having represented all types of entities, whether it be corporate, partnerships, LLCs, sole proprietorships, the biggest concern is primarily that of structure and the business aspects of it, and certainly we have considerable acquaintance with that. To say that I have represented or we have represented a rural facility, I would say we have not. I've never found that to be an obstacle once we sit down and go over what people need. But at the same time, I don't want to misrepresent it in any way that we have fit exactly your situation.
for that. I appreciate that. Have you ever done, I guess what I'm looking for, we're looking at a variety of avenues. One of those avenues is for our county to develop a not-for-profit organization that would actually assume operations of Lincoln Park Manor and to acquire, whether through a stock sale or an asset sale, the intangible assets of the organization that currently manages Lincoln Park Manor. How do you feel about your capabilities to assist us in that part of, for lack of a better term, the deal? We need, in my opinion, we need both accountants and perhaps lawyers to help us with the due diligence on what we are acquiring exactly as we go forward on this endeavor.
Well, from the standpoint of acquisition, yes, we handled any number of stock purchase and asset sale arrangements in the past. That's something we've done for many years. As far as your needs, I've already read your lease situation. I've already gone ahead and looked at some of the other documents that are in connection with your situation, including a memorandum that set out the offer from Mr. Grace relative to a stock versus asset purchase, and I think there's a long way to go in terms of evaluation that an independent party would need to be brought in. So I think it would be foolhardy to attempt to make a decision here without that additional counsel from an acquisition standpoint, and certainly there are people available to do that in various locales throughout our state. But I think that whether we represented you or not, I think it would be foolhardy not to have someone independent who sound in on that and conduct the necessary due diligence that you discussed. Secondly, we rarely get into any situation of this sort without an accountant. In fact, I have told people when we form a business, if you do not have a qualified accountant, I won't even represent you or form your business. So that's been a standard for us for many, many years and remains so here.
Some of our concern has been, this is Alexis, some of our concern has been how to go about acquiring the facility license and the Medicaid agreement payment numbers, some of those details that have to do with PAYDAD and CMS. Could you explain to us maybe any experience you have as far as working out those kind of details? Because we seem to get conflicted advice from different contacts within the State Department.
Well, I work pretty extensively with KDHE's Medicaid head lawyer, Brian Vasquez. And so he would be the first person that I would turn to as far as, since you are getting conflicting advice, since he is the Medicaid's chief lawyer for KDHE, that's probably where we begin. And I've got him on speed dial. I talk with him quite a bit on various issues. So I think he's going to be your best resource to start walking us through getting a direct answer as to what you need to do and who you need to talk to specifically.
Okay.
It sounds like one of your immediate issues deals with the Grace situation, and that frankly is a matter of some real concern here. The lease is a bit of a problem area at this point, and some of the defenses they're raising, the Topeka law firm, certainly got my attention in reading it. Not that because that provided the background that we did not have relative to their claims of noncompliance and objections to any claim of default. So I think that certainly is part of the solution, and I don't know if that's accomplished strictly with a purchase or whether asset or stock, or it needs to be taken a little further in terms of a threshold on pay up or don't, and whether that gets into the area of litigation or not. I think we need to be more acquainted with that, as I think anyone would.
Is that, you said that may be a primary step. Is that something which you feel that you would be able to pursue on our behalf?
That's what I do. I've been doing that type of work for about 42 years, and what bothers me the most is the degree of leverage you have in this situation in light of the fact that they're claiming bigger cards than you have at the table, and kind of got you bent over a little bit because of their position. And so whether or not, how that factors into a decision on solution versus, say, an asset purchase or stock purchase versus taking a stand or negotiating other aspects of it, I think very much comes into play.
Uh-huh. Does anyone have any other questions for Lynn or Jay?
I'll tell you one thing. If you're asking about our familiar small towns, I spent a lot of time in Seneca. My brother-in-law's from Fort Hays. His father, who I knew quite well, was in Triple Lloyd. We know the central campus here. Spent a lot of time in Solana. So I mean, as far as some of that, I'm comfortable there, and hopefully you're comfortable with us. My wife is from Centralia. So that we spent a lot of time in that area. Sometimes people think you're from Kansas City or something like that you're of a different sort, but we're not.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I am not from the Kansas City area, but I hail from the Appalachian Mountains of eastern Kentucky. So small towns, and I come from a very small town in the mountains. So while I'm not familiar with western Kansas so much, I am familiar with living in a rural location and a rural community.
Well, I think one consideration of our committee needs to be that we are dealing with someone from your area out there in eastern Kansas as well. So there's a double-folded issue.
Yeah, I'm just saying we're comfortable, and hopefully people are comfortable with us. We have clients from all over the state, so we're just folks, but we kind of do our job.
I don't have any further questions at this standpoint.
I don't think we do here in the office either.
I'm good.
Okay, well, if no one has any further questions, I guess we can let you guys go from the law firm. And again, I appreciate your time. I will be in contact with you after our committee does. Yes, thank you. I will get back to you after our committee deliberates and does some further investigating.
That's perfectly fine. We look forward to hearing from you. Take care, Alexis, and it was nice meeting all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
This is Steve. I hope we're all on the phone still, are we?
I think so.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I just have one request. Commissioner Flug, I'd appreciate it if you would forward to me the documents that you provided with Mr. Thomas and Ms. Bates-Wiener, so I could share those with the Folston-Seacon folks that I am familiar with.
Sure. You already got the email from Kelly, I believe, last week.
Yes, I know that I have the materials that I think he was referencing about the lease. And
The only thing I sent him in addition to that email from Kelly to the whole committee was the lease itself. And I can forward that lease to you very easily.
yeah, appreciate that, since that seems to be a point the lease as well as the arguments back and forth. That's more of what I'm referring to, but all of those documents would be appreciated.
Sure, I'll do that right now while we're on the phone.
All right, well, thank you.
So, Steve, do you want to set up a call next week with Dick Hay?
Well, let me see what I can arrange on that. I didn't, as I said, and you know, I apologize for being on vacation for a couple of weeks, but my wife and I were dealing with our elderly parents as well, and they're one set's in a nursing facility out of state. So, in addition to having operated a long-term care facility for 5 years, I'm getting experience now having family in one. So, it's one of those things. So, yes, I would like to try to set that up, and Kelly, I will do my best to keep you in the loop on those arrangements.
Okay. And Jennifer, I think you had mentioned that you had also talked to somebody. Do you want to have us talk to him too, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would prefer to talk to Mr. Hay first, just because he works for Folsom Seefkin. Folsom Seefkin works and does this work for the county. He also does work for the hospital, which I think we've had some discussions about whether or not the hospital and what that involvement could be. So I think it's kind of critical to have someone who understands all of these aspects that we're dealing with. So I'm okay with us getting set up with Mr. Hay. I did request, though, from Mr. Martin for him to just send a letter as to what his information is and to provide that to the commissioners, as I thought that was an us committee. I haven't received that yet, but I could definitely follow up on that. But I do like the idea that Mr. Granzow had about Mr. Hay, and I think that's something we need to explore, just because he's so involved with all of these things too. But I appreciate the attorneys today talking to us too. So,
Jennifer, what was the name of the attorney you just mentioned at Folsom Seefkin?
Mr. Hay.
His name is Charles R. Hay, goes by Dick.
Hay, you're saying Hay, H-A-Y?
Yes.
Yes.
And are we still considering Robert Martin out of Salina?
I mean, I really think we need to talk to Mr. Hay, and Mr. Granzow brought that up when I couldn't remember his name for the life of me, just because. And I really would like to talk to him. I mean, I feel like he and the attorneys that you talked to up in Kansas City are two important attorneys for us to talk to, but we can.
But he's sending a letter. This
yes.
Bob Martin is sending a letter. We said,
well, I mean, I'm just thinking if your feeling is that Mr. Hay is more experienced in this particular field, we definitely need to make the decision based on experience, longevity, things like that. I mean, I don't know Mr. Martin. I actually put a phone call into his firm just to see if I could speak with him, and he was busy, which is fine. But I would like to say maybe we could even call another meeting and try to get this ball rolling as far as hiring someone. And remember, we don't have to keep the same attorney for every process here.
Well, I think if we're going to have an attorney, I think that's part of the process. I think just as important, we have to have, as Mr. Thomas pointed out, an accounting firm on board for this too. And I know I've asked our accounting firm, which is Wendling No, and our accountant, Eric Otting, to do some preliminary work, not so much on the acquisition analysis. That will take quite a bit of detail. But on the question that came up while I was gone about the hospital assuming operations of the Lincoln Park Manor, and so when we're ready to go forward on that, I've got some information I can add to the mix on that. But I think in my mind, those two elements are going to be required, at least a qualified attorney and a qualified accounting firm that's used to dealing with healthcare. And I think, and as well as with KDADs and some things of that nature. So I'll have more to say on that later, but thank you.
So it sounds to me that kind of our next step in terms of just attorney accountant stuff is we really just need to talk to Dick Hay, the hospital's attorney, and probably Eric Otting, the accountant. Is that, I guess, a consensus type of thing that we need to do?
Sure, and the sooner the better.
I don't know if what everybody's schedule is next week, if we can do anything earlier than next Friday. I know it seemed like it was when I was trying to gather people together, we're all very busy.
Well, let me look at next week, and I can probably tell you here shortly where I am. Next week, my Monday is pretty clear. That's not enough time, though, to get Dick in the loop because I haven't really started talking to him. But my Monday, Thursday are both good. I have some time the afternoon. I could do some work, but my Tuesday is really blocked off with board meeting, medical staff meeting. But Wednesday, say after about 1:30, almost any time from 10 o'clock on Thursday. Of course, I'm open Monday, but I'd like an opportunity to contact Dick and go forward from there.
Have you had any preliminary discussions with Dick about the situation?
No, I have not. I did not feel that was appropriate yet to proceed without having talked to the rest of the working group. I know I've mentioned him as, I think, an excellent fellow to be in on this. I did not feel it appropriate for me to go ahead and start discussing the situation with him. Now, I have discussed the situation, I will tell you, with Eric Otting, but I have not really brought Dick into the conversation at this point in time.
Well, that's fine. And just to update you, because I have not been in contact with you, I requested from the commission that we allocate money to this committee, and that way we have the...
I've reviewed. Okay. Kelly has kept me in the loop on the notes and things, so yeah.
Okay.
I'm aware of the notes from your previous meetings and phone calls while I was on vacation, so I was aware of that.
Okay.
And I'm just back from being out of the office for 2 weeks, and as you well know, no day out of the office goes unpunished. So I'm getting caught up, and I think I'm ready to move forward on some of that stuff, but I'd like to get Dick into the loop on what we're doing. That's why I requested the documents that you had shared with Mr. Thomas and Ms. Bates-Weiner.
So would anybody else be able to meet earlier than next Friday morning? Or, I mean, I don't want to spend 3 hours of my time trying to chase down how to have another meeting. Or
Tuesday would be better for me. Otherwise, my week is pretty full of hearings. But I don't know if that's quick enough, so I'll try to do my best. What you guys said.
Are we looking primarily at next Tuesday, then the 16th?
Steve said he couldn't do
Mr.
that.
said his Tuesday is blocked.
Oh, okay.
I think Wednesday afternoon was the earliest.
I can do Wednesday afternoon and then almost any time on Thursday, the 18th.
I could probably do either one of those days.
I think I could probably do Wednesday afternoon and Thursday kind of late morning, early afternoon.
What do you have have in mind as the key topics for that day to decide which attorney is the most likely to go with, or?
It sounds like it to me, or at least have a conversation with Dick Hay, and then maybe decide from there if we want to pick one of those or go keep looking.
This is Bob, and unfortunately I'm about to hit the airport, so I'm going to hang up, but if I could, can I just make a couple of quick comments, and then I'll get out of your hair?
Yeah.
As far as next week, I cannot do Wednesday afternoon, but I could do Thursday late morning, if that works, but I know I'm not that critical of the bunch. I had suggested to Kelly if we want to expand the search just a little for attorneys, that perhaps we could contact the Kansas Healthcare Association. There's a predominant trade group in the state, and would probably have several recommendations of attorneys that specifically deal, with exactly the topic we're talking about. So that's just a suggestion, because unfortunately I don't know anybody personally in Kansas. So that's I think the extent of my comments, unless anybody has a question before but I apologize, I have to hop out of the airport.
I don't think I have any questions for you, Bob. I can keep you posted on the rest of the meeting, though.
Okay, I appreciate that.
So.
I just have one comment based on that memo you circulated this morning, Kelly. Are we burning too much time on this? I know you have to have a certain amount of time you put into it, but the memo that Ryan sent out this morning made it look like they're getting a little antsy about all this. And that's just a comment. I'm not meaning that as any kind of roadblock to considering more attorneys or more accountants. But we kind of have to start looking, I think, at time frames to do this. And that's just me. I'll go along with whatever the working group decides. But I think that's a consideration as well. I don't know how the rest of the group feels.
I guess I kind of feel the same. If anything, just for our own benefit of having kind of a time frame for what we want to try and achieve and where we want to go and so forth. So I would like to kind of try and figure out something as well. I think that would be important.
This is Alexis. I would like to just chime in to remind everyone. We've already heard many times months ago that we were under the threat of 90 days. We were under the threat of closing the doors. I mean, all of these time constraints have been placed upon us by the GraceTeam or John Grace himself, and I would just like to say he signed a 3-year lease with us, and that does basically still stand. I mean, neither one of us has completely dissolved the lease and the obligations there. And I'm not saying that we should take our time or drag our feet, but I feel like this undue, unnecessary pressure is coming from one particular angle, and the person who's making all these threats is the one that has the legal obligation to continue operating that facility while there are people in it.
And I respect that, Commissioner Flug. I respect that. What has got my attention is, and I hope you've seen the note that Kelly forwarded this morning from Ryan Grace, that we continue to drop census over there, which means we're digging a deeper and deeper hole. That's just one of my worries about, how low.
I understand that.
How low this.
I understand that.
We still have a viable business to acquire. So, that's an opinion. It's not a hard fact, and I tend to agree with you that on this back and forth. I would just like to, I would just like to get feel like we're making some forward movement a little bit more quickly, but that I tend to get nervous when I see those kinds of numbers. So I was just sharing my feelings, and I think you have a very valid point too.
I agree with you. I think that's why we need to move forward with an attorney. And my personal thought is we could break this visually into 3 segments, a pie chart, if you will. The first and very initial step is to address John Grace, and that is what Ryan's asking for in his email. Can we come back with a counter offer? And I think until we have an attorney who's familiar with that type of litigation, we don't know what to say, and so we're better off saying nothing.
Oh, I agree with that.
The second part of that pie, in my mind, is then the transition and how that sale is to happen, if there is a sale, or the child paperwork, if you will, if you boil it down to like the actual what's on paper. And then the third part of that is what the county needs to internally do as far as appointing a board, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Or deciding to go with the hospital in some sort of administrative form. But that first part of the pie to me is how to address Grace, what exactly are we doing with this lead, and which attorney do we need to pursue to have a counter argument for Grace and his attorneys. After that, if we decide to go with someone else to help us form this new entity that we're going toward, it's not that they're not interconnected, but I believe that different parties can kind of handle those issues.
Right, we just have to stay on top of the details in the process. I think we agree that we need to bring in, for lack of a better term, outside experts that we can all trust with this process. And so I think we have those people available to us, and it's just making the decision in a timely factor, I think, for all of us. But I'm as concerned about the residents as much more concerned about them than I am Mr. Grace, to tell you the truth. But I agree with you. I was just expressing, I guess, some of my frustration and feelings with the process.
One thing that struck me as I looked at Ryan's letter, he points out that it's difficult in many ways in terms of keeping staff and physicians referring people to there, and I think it's really a really important question to say, because the issue is about whether people think they're closing, and my question to you or to Ryan is who's responsible for that fear?
Exactly. That's exactly an issue.
Oh, I agree, but I don't know what we do about that now except to proceed to find an attorney and go from there, but to do that with as much alacrity as possible.
Yeah. Well, I also, as I hear the conversations, I feel what I'm hearing from everyone is that the county has no intent at all to allow this facility to close, and they're the ones that actually have the ultimate say in this regard, and so I'm not sure why we're letting any other message overcome that reality. And it would be my speculation that the feeling that it may close, what is the source of that other than the management of the care home?
I agree with that. I agree with that totally. That's, I'm not trying to hurry us up, but I want us to go forward purposely faster.
Sure. Well, and I'm not debating the timeliness of decision-making that's necessary, but I think probably even in the meantime we need to be confronting this issue of misinformation.
That was certainly the upshot after our public meeting with, I know you probably all know this, most of the people who came to that meeting were Lincoln Park Manor employees.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we're...
I would like to interject one thought here.
Yeah.
And it just goes along with where the fear-mongering is derived. After our public meeting, where we did give the consensus, the committee decided that it was a financially viable operation on some level, even if it meant continued subsidies. Kristen Robinson was there shaking her head no to my comments. And then she went ahead and held an employee meeting where she explained that that was wrong. So, you know, we're dealing with an issue. The management is telling the employees one thing and we are telling the employees something else. And from every acquisition I have looked into where a nursing home changes hands, a lot of the employees remain, but the management does not. And that is unclear in our situation here. And I do feel we owe it to the employees to give some sort of public explanation of our intention.
So how do we do that?
Well, I agree with that. I think we've done that, but we might need more reassurance. I have opinions on the administration down there that I will keep to myself. So we may want to, and you know, we could argue this forever. I suggest we move on with the rest of the agenda if we could. Or, is that acceptable?
Yes, I would just like to answer Kelly's question. I believe we do it by maybe publishing an article in the newspaper.
Okay. Is that something that we write, or is that something where we bring the newspaper in to ask them if they would be willing to do a story? Or are you talking more like a letter to the editor?
I think we write it. I don't think they publish letters to the editor anymore, according to what I've heard, but I think we could at least write an update of our committee progress and allow them to print it if they wish.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, consult with Chris on that. She can give you good guidance. But yeah, Chris Heinze is good writer.
I can talk to her.
Well, and before we move on, just one final comment in terms of hiring an attorney. At least, and again, I'm kind of an outsider here, but it seems like the key issue that's the trickiest part of this, maybe, or maybe the most difficult to get a straight answer on, is what are our options of acquiring a license? And that's the hang-up. I think a lot of these other issues about whether the lease is broken or those kind of things, that's not really a specialty per se that I think we need to be concerned with. But the licensing and what our actual options are and the timeliness and the likelihood of our options, I feel, at least from my vantage point, is the key issue.
Well, I agree with that, and that's why I was excited to hear about the law firm from today and what their connections are. And I did ask them, the first thing I asked them is if they were acquainted with John Grace, and they said no.
I guess I get the impression that from our meeting last week is with the license stuff that the attorney, we need the attorney first, and then we figure out the license things. That's kind of the impression that I got from the last meeting. I don't know if that's how everybody's feeling, but there was some talk about going to KDAD's and meeting with them then.
Kelly, what I'm kind of referring to is as we're looking in an attorney, my vote would be that you select somebody that has the most awareness, knowledge, and capacity to give us the most options about licensing.
do you think that, are you talking from an attorney perspective, or are you talking about meeting with KDADs, I guess?
Well, I would say, as you're hiring an attorney, I would suggest that we find somebody that would have the most capacity to give us the most options about acquiring the license. I don't see those as independent decisions. I mean, in other words, a good attorney that works in this field hopefully would have the connections or the knowledge and the contacts to help us have the best availability of the different methods of acquiring the license. Because that's the part that we can't. I don't think any of us have enough knowledge as to what the actual process is, what the likelihood is, the grandfathering issues and all that. Just what are our options, and I hope that the person that we get can answer those as clearly as anyone can.
Well, I guess what I'm thinking is, for the sake of today's meeting, it seems like the attorney is the first thing before we get any of those. So since we'll try and schedule a meeting on Thursday, I guess, next week with Dick Hay, and then maybe we can kind of at least make progress on that part before we get to all those other questions. But then for the sake of today's meeting and trying to move forward, Steve had mentioned he's got some information from Eric, so I guess I'm just trying to figure out if we can move on, or we need to...
I follow what you're saying. I think the question is, do we need to consider anyone else at the table, or are we comfortable with debating between the law firm from today, Thomas Baseliner, and Mr. Hay? Do we just want those two options, or would anyone else like to bring someone else into the discussion or research any other options as far as an attorney, and then maybe we can decide on one? If we continue to have our Friday meetings, maybe we could even do that Friday morning.
I guess, to me, I'm really interested in Dick Hay just because of, I went on his website along with a couple other ones that you had sent, Alexis, from today, and Bob Martin as well. And I was impressed with Dick Hay, and he seems to be very familiar with at least the hospital here. And so I would like to talk to that. And I guess I feel between the three of them, we would have some good options. That's just my opinion. I feel like we could probably spend a month, researching all sorts of attorneys too. So.
Does the hospital attorney, Dick Hay, have experience in nursing homes in particular, or just hospital facilities?
Well, healthcare in general. It's a very large, it's a statewide firm, and so within their firm, they've done about everything. So he has the resources to call upon all of that. Same with our accountant, Eric Otting. They do all kinds of healthcare plus other facilities. They audit them statewide. In fact, in my conversations with Eric, because he's been part of this for so long, they audit a nursing home management company in Wichita that he'd be willing to talk to about providing management services for when we take over Lincoln Park Manor until the county can hire its own nursing home administrator. So I've gone, as I said, I've gone farther down the road with Eric because of the financial and accounting issues than I have with Dick over the legal issues and acquiring the license and things of that nature. So I need to bring Dick up to speed, which I can do later today as need be, and we will go from there. So as far as I'm concerned. But I like the firm. They do a lot of seminars around the state, Wichita, Topeka, Kansas City, on health law issues, health employment, all kinds of things of that nature.
So, Steve, if maybe you can schedule a time with them on Thursday, maybe late morning or early afternoon.
I'll give Dick a call later today.
Okay.
You know, he always takes my calls, so
Okay.
that's a good thing.
And then on Friday, maybe we can either make a decision or, I guess, decide where we go from there. Is that okay with everybody?
I'm fine with that.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. Steve,
I
if
would
you'll
like
just...
to make a suggestion. Maybe in the meantime, the committee could at least respond to John Grace by asking for professionally audited financials. When the commission requested this information, what we received was a packet of basically an overview, and it had the name of a company on the front with no contact information. So I don't know if that was legitimately viable, but I think any attorney is going to want to know the financial status of this particular company. And if we are actually considering facilitating the purchase of this company one way or another, then we need to see those financials as well. So maybe we could... Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, Alexis, in terms of getting professionally audited financial statements, that's something that would take a significant amount of time in terms of calendar days, because it has to, first of all, it has to engage them, and then we would also have to have a method of paying them, and I'm pretty sure that would be a roadblock to getting Parkman to do so.
Well, I mean, at this point, if we're talking about a potential $500,000 investment on one end or the other, maybe we should be paying for it, because there is no business out there that would purchase another business without at least seeing tax returns and cash flow statements that are official, not just fabricated on a laptop hours before the meeting.
You know, I agree with that, if that's the avenue we're heading down. I think a kind of a key question there is, based on what our interactions have been with them and the offers that have been made by the Grace team to us, it does not appear that they're even offering to sell us a license, which is really the only thing that they possess that we really need.
True.
I believe that, I mean, they are agreeing to the change of ownership process. I mean, the way my impression of it is that whether it's the stock purchase or the asset purchase, they would be a part of the change of ownership process.
Kelly, I think the issue is that none of us really know what that entails, because there's still a question as to what is connected to that, the facility license and the Medicaid payment agreement, one or the other.
I believe it's all of it. I mean, I think last week I had sent out what that change of ownership process and all the documents required. When I had, at some point, I think it was after, or when we were meeting with the commission there a month ago, this question came up, and I had sent an email to Ryan Grace kind of asking if that was part of it, and based on his response, and I believe that it's that whole process, the license, the facility license, the Medicaid agreement, the Medicare agreement, all of that is part of this change of ownership process, which they would be just working with us to do that whole transition.
Okay, but the confusion is what the price tag is associated with that, because that wasn't mentioned in his written offer.
Well, as we're getting into looking at what they have for sale as far as the assets go, and it was my presumption that that's what we would look at based on Bob's recommendation. I think that's why we bring on an accountant. As soon as we bring on a law firm, we need to bring on an accounting firm, because we can send in our own accountants to at least, they have methods for spot checking all of those numbers. It's not like doing a full audit, but they can go in, I believe, and look at some key indicators and investigate those further. I think that a couple of the things we've discussed is, and where we would need advice, and Mr. Alden, I would defer to you. Do we really want to buy their accounts receivable? Well, if the answer to that is yes, then we need to have somebody go in and look at those accounts receivable and do a reliability test on them. I think their offer is to take and continue to have all of the payables. My feeling is I don't know what we do about that. Do we trust them to pay those payables and so on and so forth? And I think that's where we get into some of the audit function that would be associated with the purchase of those assets. Because I go back to what we've discussed earlier. The only real thing of value that they have is that Medicaid license, because that's what generates your income stream going forward. The standard operating procedures for a lot of this is to look at the net present value of everything going forward. And the only thing that we can actually tie any of those cash flows to is whether or not we have that Medicaid number. So I think that Medicaid license. And so I think we get into all of this, what are we buying? Basically, the big thing we want to buy is that Medicaid license. And we may have to buy some other superfluous things on that because of the way things are valued, but we have to be careful about that too because of all the laws regarding, fraudulently inflating assets and things of that nature. I'm not really worried about that here. I think John Grace wants out of this with as much money as he can get, and our duty is to make sure that we've got the experts on board like Dick Hay or Eric Otting or whomever who can help us with that valuation process. So, that's kind of where the looking at it. It's like any big project you want to finance. The people that are going to finance it, the bank's going to come in and want to look at your books. And right here, the county is bank, and we just need to get in there and dig through it. I don't know that we need to do a complete full audit on that, but we do have to do a careful examination of what it is we're buying and go from there. I kind of agree with Kelly on or I do agree with Kelly on moving forward. We need to concentrate on that change of ownership and for the facility license and make sure we get the Medicaid number with that. That's my 2 cents worth.
So in my mind, I'm thinking we really, our true next steps in terms of moving forward with any kind of either work with the Grace team or license or whatever, is we need to have an attorney and we need to have an accountant. And we need to kind of hand this over to them to a certain degree to look things over and tell us what our next steps are. I guess that's kind of what I'm thinking this boils down to.
Well, I'm currently reading the letter that Eric Otto sent, and I think he's given us a lot of good base information there.
Yeah.
So how do we go about obtaining an accounting firm, and do we want to only look at one? Because the way it sounded to me from talking with that law firm this morning, they expect us to have one. And, that's our independent decision regardless of who we hire to represent us legally. So we need to move forward with that as well, I think.
Well, I'm prejudiced. I think we go with Wendling Noe. They know enough about our finances and our market just being here in the they would happily do this. And one of the things it gives us, and because my opinion is going forward, we take them on as the auditors for any new entity we set up. And that gives us one point of focus for an accounting firm that knows a lot about the healthcare business infrastructure here in Lincoln County. That would be my argument. I want to stay with the devil I know rather than the devil I don't know. And Eric and his people are very diligent, very straightforward, and easy to deal with.
I agree with that, Steve. I think I've talked to Eric maybe a couple times now, and he's always been very responsive and kind of has helped me understand some things that I'm not familiar with a lot of this stuff. So I think he seems like a very knowledgeable and very responsive. I also think that keeping everything somewhat comparable or with what the hospital has in terms of the people, just because they're familiar with that and they kind of understand maybe the bigger picture that we as a county are looking at. That I think that just is good. The more people that we bring in and entities, it just seems like the more possibilities there are for something to drop between all of us.
So I'm going to make an assumption here, and please correct me if I'm wrong. But if we're considering hiring an auditing firm for this particular situation, as well as commingling management with the hospital, then we are not considering the part of John Grace's offer that comes with his sale, which is to continue his consultation as the contractual payment agreement or something like that.
I don't think we've ever talked about commingling with the hospital.
My position, yes. I think once we're shut of him, we're shut of him, and go on and do something else, because I think once we're done with John Grace, and that's where we try to bring in some new blood, and we would have two good consultants on that. I think one would be Holston Siepken, the other would be Eric Hodgkin, because I know he does some of this work for other folks. So I would agree with that statement. Once we're done with him, we're done with him.
Okay, so then I'm going to take it a step further, and I'm assuming that you are not interested in obtaining your administrative license personally.
Yeah, right. I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not. I think we need to. I think we need to find somebody who's got a nursing home license and nursing home administrator's license. If we have to go through having somebody to come in and help us manage it in the first 6 weeks while we're looking for that person, then I would go to somebody I trust. As I mentioned earlier, I trust Eric Hodgkin on all of that, and he has some contacts that he's willing to talk to on our behalf.
Well, my interjection is the few places that I've discussed their transition and acquisition, it's more like a 6-month interim, maybe not 6 weeks.
Oh, no, I meant, did I say 6 weeks? I meant 6 weeks.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, so we're on the same page. And basically what I have found is that there are larger operating companies who do a wide gamut of operations, whether it be they own and operate the entire facility and property, they lease it and they manage it, or they provide interim administration.
Well, I think
one of the other things
if we're going to have the local foundation and board running it, I think That's my opinion. I think it's altogether better off to have an administrator who at least lives in the community or is close to the community, somebody who's directly responsible to that board and can mingle with the public out and about.
I do not object to that at all as a long-term goal. However, I'm talking about the immediate solution upon transaction and transition, because we cannot operate without that person
Right.
and the facility license and the Medicaid agreement. So I'm talking about contracting on a temporal basis, be it 6 months to a year, for someone who knows that they are temporary and can come in and straighten out the situation, which allows us time to basically advertise for hire.
Right. I agree with that, and they may even help us recruit somebody. That's why I say we go with people that I think we bring in somebody new to operate that, and on that kind of basis. I'm just saying I don't think we need to do business with John Grace anymore. And that's just my opinion. But we find an interim firm, as you just described, that will come in, help us with the operations, and then help us recruit a nursing home administrator.
Then I would like to suggest that we begin working on an RFP for that interim management. And maybe we're only looking at a 1-year agreement, but I think that's going to be necessary in the transition.
Yeah. But like I say, I know people that do this, so if you'd let me run with that for a bit, I can maybe bring back some things for consideration for the committee in the future. If you don't object.
That sounds good to
I have
me.
no objection to that. I just think that, along with the accounting firm and the attorney, are all a simultaneous need.
Right. Yeah. Pretty close.
Can I just clarify one thing, just to make sure I'm understanding? Ultimately, though, don't we need to be setting up this 501c3 because, this isn't the hospital managing it. What we're talking about is a 501c3. So at the same time, it seems like we still need to at least get that structure in place so that when it's ready, it's there, because that's a process as well.
Yeah, and
Last week we decided that we wouldn't advertise for that board until we found an attorney and got some direction from an attorney.
Well, I guess, but I'm thinking, advertising for the board, we don't need to do that yet, but getting that 501c3 in place, maybe getting the bylaws in place so that...
Yeah, but what attorney's going to do that?
Oh, okay.
Well,
we got to find somebody.
I think we could do that locally with either Dan Metz or Bob Krankel. Bob's already kind of fabricated a 501c3 because that's I agree, that's a time-consuming process. You can get it certified as a state not-for-profit within about 6 weeks, but it takes 4 to 6 months to get that through the IRS. And we can either do that locally or do that with any firm that we retain, I think.
Okay, so we wait for the firm.
I leave that up to the working group.
I think we need to get the attorney's input.
Okay. That's fine with me. I'm just trying to make some suggestions.
So for the sake of time, I guess it's 10:10. On Thursday, Steve, you're going to try and organize a meeting or a conference call with Dick Hay.
Yes.
And on Friday, maybe we can decide whether we want to continue to do more or move forward with one of the two that we've talked to, or if we want to, like what Bob Siebel mentioned, the Kansas Healthcare Association. And also, I guess next steps, the attorney and the accountant. If we can get those on board, everything else can start to fall into line, I think. And we can get some direction from them in terms of what they need and how they would recommend we move forward.
I think that sounds fine to me. I can't disagree with that, Kelly.
Okay.
May I ask Jennifer O'Hara a question?
Yeah.
Do you believe that we need to make any sort of attempt to respond to John or Ryan Grace?
I think we've got a little bit of time. I mean, I'm a little concerned about us sending conflicting messages because we're so focused right now on trying to find an attorney, and I really feel like next week, even if we wait a week and a half, I don't think that's going to hurt us in any way, shape, or form. I mean, they know we're obviously working on things. I mean, what we're doing right now is going to be posted online. They're going to know what we're talking about and how we're doing it. I just don't even know what to say to them at this point. That's my struggle with responding.
And so one more thought along those lines, by my estimated calculations, the commission is owed upwards of $30,000 in rent. Mm-hmm. The hospital is owed 20 some odd thousand in unpaid bills.
Yeah, about 20.
Okay. So, Jennifer, what do you think our leverage is, or how do you think we should approach that debt? Or how do we even convey that message to the attorney that we're hiring?
Well, I think we just talked to the attorney, and those are part of the facts on the ground that we present to anybody coming into this. Those are just facts, and so John Grace has got a set of facts he's arguing. We've got a set of facts we're arguing, and I think that's once we get an attorney on board, we let them decide how to approach that. As long as they keep us in the loop, they'll discuss it with us, I believe.
That's typically how it's done, Steve. I appreciate that.
Yep.
I think we really need to find an attorney next week. That's what I think.
I agree.
So that'll be mission number 1.
Right.
And we're all satisfied with 2 options.
Seems like they're good options to me. I mean, unless...
I think they're both good options. I'm fine with them.
Okay.
I want to make one more point before I close. I've emailed each of you a letter from our accountants, Wendley No, regarding the financial implications of the hospital assuming the operations of Lincoln Park Manor. And I will note this is based on, as I mentioned in my email, Lincoln Park Manor's most recent Medicaid cost report, which is on file with the state. But I would point out that the number you're looking at as a loss, $368,233 in the first year, is only if we can get Lincoln Park Manor to break even in that first year. That number grows pretty large if we don't. So again, I would reiterate what my board and I believe, and what we basically put forward the first summer I was here, is that taking over the operations of Lincoln Park Manor would be a major financial impediment and endanger the future health of Lincoln County Hospital. So I'm happy to reply to questions on that, but in the interest of time, just give me a call later today if you have questions about what we're doing with this, if that's all right with you.
Yes, thank you, Steve, for putting that together.
One additional note is that the salary expenses listed for LPM for 2017 are vastly higher than they were for previous Medicaid cost reports.
Well, and that's fine. That's why I stated it's for that 2017 year. Those numbers would be reviewed by
I'm just referring to the idea that that may be an inflated salary expense compared to what we may see in the future, depending on where those salaries were allocated this past year.
Well, I would not dispute that, but it is based on the facts that are on file with the Kansas Department of Aging and the Medicaid folks, KMAC folks. So, but I want to make sure that's clear going forward. But what I would say to that is that salaries for nursing staff are inflating at about 2 times the inflation rate for other salaries in healthcare. What we're seeing in healthcare is a 2.5% to 3% salary inflation rate for any kind of nursing staff, from CNAs on up to RNs. It's inflating from 5 to 6% per year. So I'll leave that there.
Okay, well, I think our first task is by the end of next week to maybe have an attorney and an accountant on board. I can lump those together.
I think that sounds good.
Okay.
Can I move to adjourn?
Yes, you can. I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.